etc., etc. Boss pushed back as much as possible, but was getting crapped on constantly by new VP because the useless metrics VP wanted us tracked by did not meet his super unrealistic expectations. Despite my boss's team being the most experienced and efficient in the company, and doing significantly more volume and more complex work than any other team. About 9 months ago, boss had enough of just getting consistently crapped on by VP and took a new job and left. Boss had been with the company for 13 years and was one of the first few 100 employees. My whole team was devastated. We all instantly started lobbying for the most tenured person on our team to get promoted into that role, as she would have the same philosophy as the boss that just left. VP interviews most tenured and a bunch of external candidates, and goes with someone from his previous company. Now, this lady will be referred to as Bitch Boss from here on out for soon-to-be obvious reasons. She came in and completely destroyed the team from top to bottom, changed processes that had been perfected for years, did not listen or care about what anyone else had to say, started micromanaging to the extreme. Team morale dropped like a rock. It took less than a month for the team's output to crater due to all of her changes. The team went from best in the company to the worst. It took Bitch Boss about 2 months to get to my smaller sub-team and try to rework our processes. Bitch Boss started micromanaging projects, having no idea what she's doing, and causing all kinds of issues and delays. She started getting on us about our metrics being the worst on the team, despite us working on the super complex projects that took 10 to 100 times longer on average than most of the work the rest of the team did. Bitch Boss told us that if we didn't meet the expected metrics, we would be put on performance improvement plans. So we decided to comply and focused all of our efforts on simple projects to meet the metric, X number of projects completed per month per person, and left the complex ones sitting in the queue. This caused chaos. Very quickly, the sales team is freaking out because deals are getting delayed, and their huge commission checks from the complex projects are being put in jeopardy. When they came to us to ask when we were going to complete the complex projects, we all gave the same response. Bitch Boss has told us to focus all of our efforts on meeting metric X, so we will only be doing that. Unfortunately, that means we can no longer complete the complex projects. Please contact Bitch Boss for help in getting them completed. This did not go over well with her or VP, as he started to get complaints as well. They called a meeting and told us we had to go back to doing the complex projects. We refused, as that made it impossible to meet the metrics they created to measure our performance. They refused to drop the metric, but still insisted we work on the complex ones as we were the only ones with the knowledge. We still refused. This resulted in a lot more complaints from sales until the SVP got involved. The SVP was the one who created the complex sub-team to begin with, and sided with us against the VP and Bitch Boss. He said we were not to be measured by the metrics, and can go back to managing the complex stuff without fear of being put on a performance improvement plan. So we did. At this point, the other 3 people on the sub-team had seen the writing on the wall and were all actively applying and trying to leave ASAP. They were all office-based in the H-Call area still. Bitch Boss changed the team from come in 1 to 2 days a week as needed to mandatory 3 days in the office. Most company policy would let her. So they got a lot more of her BS than I did remote. I had not been applying because I was distracted. My old boss had approved 2 weeks of vacation for my wedding and honeymoon before he left. This happened to occur about 3 months after Bitch Boss started, and about a month after the whole performance improvement plan blow up. Bitch Boss was pissed at how we showed her up in front of the SVP and was doing everything she could to make our lives miserable. In that month, the other super experienced guy and my best friend on the sub-team got a new job and left, no notice, and one of the other guys on the sub-team has put in his notice and only had a week left. We were already slammed and still behind from the performance improvement plan fiasco, so losing half the sub-team just made that worse. Plus, with morale so low, we didn't bother to put in any extra effort anymore. In fact, the whole team was significantly behind, as 6 of the 16 people had left or were on their notice periods at that point. So Bitch Boss decided that she was canceling my already approved wedding leave because of how far the team was behind. She told me over Zoom. I told her there was no chance I'm missing my wedding and honeymoon for work, and I'm taking the full leave, and it's up to her if she wants to lose another person from the sub-team for 2 weeks or permanently. She BS'd, yelled, and threatened until I just left the Zoom call. She followed up with an email officially notifying me my leave was cancelled, and if I didn't show up, it would be considered job abandonment. I called her bluff and replied, CCing VP and SVP and some other sales VPs who I worked with regularly, explaining the situation. It's my wedding honeymoon, and that I appreciated the opportunity but was quitting immediately with no notice due to the disrespect from Bitch Boss. I got Slack messages from SVP and several of the sales VPs almost immediately asking me not to quit. The email chain itself blew up with complaints about how my team was mismanaged by Bitch Boss, and how now more complex deals were going to get lost because I wouldn't be there at all to work on them, etc. SVP eventually shut it down, but it was a fun read. I didn't reply to the Slack messages or do any work the rest of that day, just turned everything off and went to a bar and had a good time. I woke up the next day late in the morning and very hungover to a few voicemails on my phone from SVP asking me to call him. I called back in the early afternoon and talked to the SVP. He was very understanding, asked me to come back, listened to all my complaints, and eventually made an offer. Basically, if I came back and worked the rest of the week and tried to train a few team members to work on complex stuff to cover while I was gone, he would give me a $3,000 wedding bonus. I would get my full PTO, and when I got back, Bitch Boss would leave me alone and let me manage the complex stuff and pick 2 more people to permanently train back onto the sub-team to backfill what we had lost. I accepted. Weddings are effing expensive, so I tried to train people to cover for me, impossible task, then leave on my PTO. I had a great wedding and honeymoon. VP called me a few times when the 4th guy from my sub-team quit with no notice about 1.5 weeks in, but I ignored him and didn't respond. I come back refreshed and ready for the crap show I know is waiting. It was chaos. All the salespeople were slacking and emailing me about all the complex things they needed done 2 weeks ago. The people I'd quickly trained before leaving hadn't been able to do almost anything. There was a huge backlog for the entire team, as half of the original 16-person team was gone at this point. I turned off my Slack and emailed the sales VPs directly, asking them to give me a prioritized list of all the complex deals they needed done. Got the list and started working through it in my normal working hours, nothing more. Bitch Boss never tried to talk to me or interfere. VP did a few times. At one point, he tried to make me work weekends to catch up. I refused. This went on for about a month or so. Bitch Boss never mentioned me training people to replace my sub-team, and I never brought it up. They did, however, have the larger team try some of the smaller complex projects to help get them out. They also hired some new people for the larger team. The normal 4 to 6 month training process my old boss developed was ignored, and the new hires were just thrown in the deep end, which resulted in new hires making mistakes that cost the company a lot of money. This brought us to annual bonus and raise time. I had started frantically job hunting as soon as I got back from the honeymoon. I got some interviews, was in some later stages, but no offers yet. I had a Zoom meeting invite from Bitch Boss to go over my bonus and raise. She decided it would be a great idea to give me 80% of my expected bonus, the lowest possible, and a 0% raise. Justified it with a bunch of BS. Not a team player, metrics bad, blaming me for mistakes made by new hires, etc, etc. I didn't really argue or care at this point. At that point, I really quiet quit. Cut my daily output to below half, just did the bare minimum, and waited for the bonus to come in with my next paycheck 2 weeks later. At this point, the sales team is getting pissed because the complex stuff basically isn't getting done. I had almost caught up on the important ones before the raise and bonus, but with me barely working, everything was falling behind again. Bitch Boss smelled weakness and showed up on one of the progress calls I had with sales. The project was running